Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I just talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, but today we're talking about books, and we're doing our third book journey. This time I have my friend and guest, Andy Wolverton, and he is coming to you straight from Maryland right now. He is a librarian, he is a reader, film and comic lover, and he also authors the blog Journeys in Darkness and Light, and he works as a librarian in Maryland at the Arundel County Public Library, and I'm so excited to talk to you today. How are you doing, Andy?
Good, Nathan. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm probably going to be the biggest nerd you've ever had on your program. So I hope everybody's okay with that.
Oh, well, I'm excited about it. In fact, I mean, reading that like little bio, like all the things that you do are the things that I enjoy too. And I haven't really talked much about comics in the past on my channel or whatnot. I've talked a little bit with my friend Aaron Penn a little bit about comics, but for the most part, I haven't really dived into that. So I hope that we could talk about that a little bit today too.
I hope so.
But yeah, you know what the drill is, and I hope everyone is excited to learn from Andy. And he is a great source. In fact, the reason actually the way I met you was through our mutual friends Vanessa and Raquel. We were, I think, all a part of. Raquel was a guest on. Is it a semi-monthly or is it a monthly thing you do with the library?
Yeah, we have a book discussion. I do that too, but that's different. We have a movie discussion program at the library. We used to do it pre-COVID. We'd get everybody together at the library, watch a movie, and discuss it afterwards. So now what we do is we have a movie that people can watch on Canopy and at their convenience, and then we gather together virtually to discuss it. But we have certain special programs too, like we had Raquel over to talk to us about her favorite movies, books about movies from 2020. And you were there, and it was wonderful to have you as well. And it was really great. I mean, everybody was frantically writing down titles, and
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
it was just wonderful. So we're I think I told you off mic that we're going to have her back again, and we'd love to have you. Hope you'll be able to join us again. So yeah, we do that generally twice a month, and I can tell people how to find out. The great thing about these discussions is they're open to anybody in the world. You don't have to live in Maryland. You don't even have to live in the United States. So we would love to have as many people as want to join us.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was such a wonderful program and a great introduction to a world that a pocket of the world that I don't really know even much about. And so it's great to have this opportunity, and it's great that you have this accessibility to pretty much anybody. And I love that. And I'll definitely be putting that in the description down below and trying to get as many people involved as possible with that, because it's a wonderful thing, and I think it's a great service. So it's great to meet you from that, that little, just a little journey right there.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into the book journey. The first question is always the one that everyone already knows what's going to happen. But thinking about books and thinking about your early memories with them, do you have any particular ones that stick out to you that really just kind of shine a light into where you are today?
Yes, I do. I grew up. I only have one brother, only one sibling, one brother, but he's 12 years older than I am. So I always tell people that when he went off to college, I was just learning how to read. So the great thing about it was he left a lot of books behind and a lot of comic books behind. So, as I was learning to read, the novels that he had a lot of science fiction paperbacks that I wasn't ready to read yet. But he also had a lot of comic books. And I remember one of the first comics that I really got excited about was Captain America. And of course, I don't have the original comics anymore, but you can get these, massive collections from Marvel that's
Yeah, the omnibus, wonderful. The omnibuy.
Yeah, the omnibus. So I read a lot of those when I was a kid, and also a lot of horror comics. This was I think my parents just about had a heart attack when I was 10. My cousin gave me this EC horror comics, and I still have the inscription that I got this from, I don't know if you can see it, my cousin Sonny on Christmas 1972, which I would have been 10 years old then. And, this is pretty crazy stuff for a 10-year-old, but I just loved it. So again, even before by 10 I could read, obviously, but
Hopefully,
before that, yeah, I was able to get a little bit done by then. But I just loved that. And I loved pretty much anything having to do with horror or science fiction. So again, my brother left this huge stack of books that he didn't want to take to college. So I just sailed through those, and that was my first real experience of loving to read, because those books were just available. They were right there.
So do you associate, I guess, your love of reading just in general with your brother?
I think he had a large part of I can attribute a lot of that to him, even though he really wasn't there. When he did, later in life, as I got into college and I would go visit him. He still lived pretty far away. But every time we get together, we would talk about books and movies. Have you read this? Have you read that? What'd you think of this? You should try this. I think you'd like this. So he really was, for a long time, my go-to person for reading material, like, suggestions. And it was just so great when we read the same book and we could just talk for hours about it.
It's nice to have, I mean, even though, there's such an age gap and there's this distance there, at least there, you still have somebody there that you could look up to kind of look at recommendations and look towards what you might be reading, I guess, in the future, like, well, what are you reading, or what are you reading, like back and forth and seeing that. That's nice. I guess outside of your brother, where did it kind of go from once you got into your adolescence in college?
I spent a lot of time, like a lot of people that are on your show, like Vanessa and Raquel. I spent a lot of time watching movies. So really, that was my focus. It really wasn't so much reading. I liked reading, but I didn't really do that much of it until I got into high school. I still read, but there was really one incident and one teacher that really got me going in reading. Of course, in high school, you have to do a lot of book reports, and I did those, and didn't really like it. But I found that one teacher had a pretty cool list, and it had some science fiction and horror on it. So I read all of that stuff I could. I read all the H.G. Wells, I read all the Ray Bradbury stuff, and then once I ran out of that, I thought, I'm in deep trouble now. I don't know what to do. There's all these other books that I don't want to read. Mm-hmm. But finally, when I got into the 11th grade, I had a teacher, English teacher, and her name was Kathy Huff. And I really need to track her down and thank her, because the first words out of her mouth, the very first day of class, she said, okay, we're going to have to do book reports. And we were all just, oh, man, it's another year of this, Mm-hmm. But she said these magic words. She said, you can read anything you want. And we all kind of looked at each other and like, did she really say that? Does anybody have this on tape? But she had like a point system. So if you wanted to get an A in the course, you had to have 25 points worth of books. And the first thing she said was, and this sounds terrible, but she said, girls, if you want to read romance novels, you can do that. They'll be worth 1/4 point. And you can only read 4 of them. So her system was, if you brought a book to her and she approved it, and she would tell you, okay, here's how many points that book is worth. Well, I was a big Stephen King reader even back then. And he really didn't have many movies out. I think Carrie was the only movie he had.
Yeah.
And I really, really wanted to read The Stand, which was, huge. So I brought it to her, and I figured she was just going to say, you can't read that. But she said, okay, if you can prove to me that you've read this book and understand it, I'll give you 8 points. And I thought, wow, 8 points, we've got to get 25. That's pretty cool. And what we had to do, we didn't have to do these in front of class, but we just had to write down on a note card, like a summary of the book, what it meant to us, themes. And I turned that in, and she said, okay, 8 points. What do you want to read next? And it was great, but then she would also do things like try to challenge you to read something that still interests you, but beyond what you were doing. She said, okay, what, maybe you like Stephen King, you might want to read something like M.R. James or Algernon Blackwood or some of those. And I'm like, okay, I'll try that. So she did such a great job of giving you what you want, but pointing you towards something else.
Well, it's nice to get somebody who could curate, I guess, or like kind of mold people into the things that they enjoy. And there's very few teachers like that, I feel like. And for some reason, I feel like most people have at least one teacher in their life that did something, maybe it's not to do with books or anything. It's just they had one teacher in their life that meant something to them, that they learned so much from, that they can associate some memories and also some meaningful life experiences with. I know for me, I had a history teacher who got me in my love of history, and I just got obsessed with it. And that's what I wanted to do in college, up until I'm like, oh, there's not very many job opportunities with this. And so maybe I should switch it over and make this just a hobby. But I'm excited to hear that you had, I guess, an instructor or a teacher who gave you that freedom, but also knew kind of where they were going, and decided to give them some pointers on maybe not to, like, go the easy route, but then also kind of challenge themselves. So that's a rare thing, and that's something obviously you haven't forgot. So that's an amazing memory.
Yeah, it really was. And it's kind of like I've tried to carry that over into the library world. When people order like the same type of book over and over, or the same author over and over, I will usually say, there's another writer that I think you would like, and it maybe is like one level up or two levels up. And sometimes they'll take the plunge, and sometimes they won't. But it's kind of nice to be able to kind of carry on that tradition that she started. As a librarian, I can kind of reach more people, maybe not more people, but on a different level.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Hey, I'm recording. They're not listening. Hold on a second.
No, I'm recording. Okay, yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Okay, Mom. Right back. See you.
It was my mom.
Oh.
Dropping off W-2 stuff. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because for some reason one of my jobs still sends stuff to my parents' house, but I guess I just need to update that.
Oh, okay.
It's been a while since that's happened, so I definitely need to get on that. Anyway, so we're back to this. All right, so I guess moving past the high school period in your life, was there anything in college or young adulthood that kind of spurned your love of film and books?
Oh, good question. Well, I was really fortunate enough to have a roommate in college who liked to read, and he always said, I'm not well read, which I think he was. I think he just didn't like to talk about it a lot. And we watched a lot of movies together too. College town, there's usually a few theaters around, and we would go watch movies and discuss them, into the night. And he was my roommate, so he was always there. I mean, you could always talk about that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool. And then I found other people in college too, but really it was this guy that I roomed with that really kind of kept that going.
Is there any particular movies? I know this is a book journey, but is there any particular movies that stuck out with you when you were watching it with him for like first time watches or anything?
I don't think I watched it with him, but we talked about it, and that was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which my brother had seen and told me about, but at the time it was not easy to see, and this was pre VHS, and I found a place in my college town that had it on VHS, and it was probably a terrible way to experience 2001 for the first time. I've seen it on the big screen since, but I was just blown away, and I said, I've got to find somebody to talk with about this movie. I've got to. And I would go to my roommate hadn't seen it, and so many other people hadn't seen it. So I was really searching for somebody who's seen this movie,
Hmm.
and eventually, of course, I did. But that's the great thing about college is you stay up late, you talk to people for long periods of time,
Oh yeah.
and you're able to explore some of these movies that are a little difficult to understand, like 2001, Blow Up, films like that really challenge you as a viewer, especially as a young viewer. I mean, I'm like
Right.
19, 20, and it's not just the typical stuff that plays in the theaters. You had to seek that stuff out because you usually couldn't find it in the theater. We didn't really have a repertory theater, so VHS was really a godsend because you could rent a lot of those, and if you could find somebody to talk to, you were set. This was great, and it was so cool because, like, even if you didn't have a date that weekend, you could still talk to your buddies about movies, which
Yeah.
wasn't as good, but it was still pretty good.
Right. It's interesting, like thinking about that time period and the I guess the luxury of the period that we live in now, where we're just so blessed with I mean, obviously the people that we know and the different communities and pockets that we're able to share, and these online communities to kind of experience films that we're all watching our different little things, and we could talk and thinking about how the difference between accessibility back then. I mean, even when I was growing up, really with dial-up, there wasn't really much talking about different movies that I was watching unless it was with my friends, and I couldn't, or maybe I guess the books that I was reading at that time, because I read a lot of the science fiction stuff, maybe some H.G. Wells and some George Orwell, those type of books growing up. But for the most part, they were book reports, and
Yeah.
I didn't really fall in love with them because they weren't stuff that I seeked out myself. And I'm glad that you were able to have a college roommate and also live in that college environment to kind of see where you can flourish with the things that you enjoy, right?
Yeah.
And I guess moving from there, how did you get into being a librarian?
Good question. Well, I was a band director. I was a music student, so I wanted probably about the time I was in the ninth grade, I figured out that I wanted to be a band director, and I did that for 13 years in public schools. Most of it was with middle school kids, middle school and high school. And my wife is a musician. We met in graduate school. She's a clarinet player, and she won an audition with the United States Navy Band when we were living in Texas. And I had told her before, those bands are really hard to get into. And her sister is also a clarinet player. She'd auditioned for like 4 or 5 different bands, and you get turned down, you get turned down, you get turned down. So I told my wife, yeah, if you win an audition, we'll move to Washington, D.C. We'll move to that area, thinking it was going to take her several auditions to get in, and
Sure.
she got in on the very first try. So we got into we moved to Washington, D.C. in December of 2000, I believe it was, and it was the middle of a school year, so there weren't any band directing jobs open. Nobody was leaving. Yeah.
I know about that school. I work for the university and school, so I know when you need to search for a job. So that's got to be hard.
Yeah. So I just got jobs doing other things. I got a job in a bookstore, a couple of different bookstores. And I thought, I like books a lot. I'm used to working with people, being a teacher. And I thought maybe I should try to find a library job. And it took me a few times, and I got first a part-time job. And I thought, I really like this. I wish I could do it full-time. And then I got a full-time job. And I've been a librarian this is my 13th year of doing that. So it's been a really good transition because a lot of the people skills that I learned as a teacher have transferred into working with the public, which is good. I kind of feel like I'm always playing catch up though with my book knowledge, because there's just, as you know, I mean, there's just so much of it, and new
Right.
stuff keeps coming out. You know,
You can't you can't push pause on any of it either.
no,
You just got to you got to, especially. So I have a similar kind of story with working at the record store that I used to work at. Just being that person that has that curated knowledge, or I guess at least you're the person that people are going to go to and ask for recommendations, or looking towards your expertise, I guess. If you would call yourself, I'd be like your friend. I wouldn't call myself an expert on this at all. I just happen to be in this world, and so I might have a little bit of knowledge here, but yeah, it's got to be difficult to keep up with all that, and I'm sure it is even now with just the amount of stuff we want to watch, because all of our interests, it seems to be in things like this or the things behind you, and it's constantly overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a labor of love, though.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to hear that you're in your 13th year. Congratulations, and I know
Thank
that with COVID, everything's been a little bit of an adjustment, especially working with the public. And I know that we were talking a little bit off camera, but I know that you have some amazing services that you're doing right now, and I'm sure once this kind of dies off, things will kind of get back to normal, hopefully, for libraries. I know our library here in our town is open, at least the main one is, but it's very spacious. I go in there occasionally, and I actually have a few books here that I'll probably mention that I'm reading later when we're talking about our current reads. But it's very interesting, depending on where you live, what is accessible or available for people.
Yeah, we do, as I was telling you off camera, we do curbside service. People aren't coming into the library right now, but we do a lot of curbside. And one of the things we really like to do is what we call a book bundle. So since people can't come in, they might call up and they will say, in fact, I had a gentleman that called me up this past week, and he said, I really need something to read. I like Westerns. So can you get me some Westerns? And I was immediately thinking, like, the older stuff, I'm losing my mind here. I can't think of any.
Like McCormick?
Yeah, like Max Brand, the Zane Grey, the really, really older stuff, Louis L'Amour, that type of stuff. And I was talking to the guy a little bit more, and I said, well, can you tell me a little bit more about what you like? And he said, stories from the French and Indian Wars. And I thought, okay, that's not what I was thinking of as Westerns, but that's what he's looking for. And and things from the Revolutionary War. And I'm okay. Now we're getting a clearer picture.
Like going earlier past the Westerns.
Right.
Much earlier.
And I thought, this is going to be tricky. And I said, do you want fiction or nonfiction? And he pretty much says, yes, both.
Yeah.
So that's the type of thing that I love to do. And I love to do some research and figure out, okay, based on what this guy has told me, do I think he might like this book or this book? And I love putting that together. And I always tell them, I'm going to leave this bundle for you, and you can pick it up during curbside. Let me know what you like, and let me know what you don't like, and that will help me to do that. And we do that for kids. We do it for teenagers. So that really does increase my knowledge, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, that seems like a dream job to me. Being able to, well, one, you're learning, on top of what you're already doing, providing that service, learning about other people and their interests, but you're also learning about these different genres or different reads that are curated and can be helpful to them. And whether it works or not, you can figure that out. And I mean, like you said, that was an easy transition, I guess, going from a teacher to your current state as a librarian, because that's kind of how I feel. So I teach public speaking at the university that I work at, and my number one goal is to see progress at the end of the semester. All that fear that they have at the very beginning, and the subject matter and material, and just in general, going up in front of talking in front of people, and seeing at the very end, like, okay, well, I got some organization down. I have a little bit more confidence down. I may have hated this class still, but thanks, I guess. And so,
Yeah,
it's
what
nice
you've
reward.
taken them, yeah, you've taken them from a place they were not comfortable with, and taken them to a place that hopefully they are comfortable with or more comfortable with. So that's a tremendous thing. And public speaking, I, I've always heard that's the number one fear of people in the
Yeah,
world.
that's the big statistic I have to always mention at the very beginning of the class, that I think it's somewhere along the lines of it's bigger than the fear of death, I suppose. Like, so it's the fear of embarrassment, I suppose, is what it gets trips a lot of people up. But luckily, I'm pretty easygoing, and for the most part, I think that I'm comfortable around them, and so I can tell based on just talking to you. I'm sure that you're very easily approachable and easy to talk to. So I'm assuming that people in your community are probably pretty happy to talk to you about just about anything.
I hope they are. And like I said, it's something I enjoy. And I think when you enjoy something, that it is just more natural that you're glad to do it. And again, approaching it from a sense of I'm learning too. They're teaching me.
Exactly.
So it's a win-win.
Well, I guess we'll move a little bit away from the journey at the moment and talk a little bit about some of your books that you are currently reading. So, is there anything that you've been currently on your queue, or anything that you're looking forward to right now?
Yeah, in fact, I just finished this book, Transit by Anna Segers, and this is a German novel that came out during World War II. Segers was she was in a concentration camp in Germany. She was a communist and a Jew. And the book is fiction, but it does really a great job of her journey in trying to get transit papers, visas, exit visas. And it's almost like a spiral type of nightmare. It's almost like, in some ways, it's kind of like a ghost story, and in other ways, it's like Dante's Inferno.
Okay.
It's almost impossible to get out, to escape. And she does such a great job. And we had discussed the movie Transit, a German film, which is a wonderful German film that is playing on Canopy, and we actually did a discussion on that. So I wanted to read the book as well, and yeah, that was a tremendous read. Nonfiction. And actually, this will maybe bring us into comics a little bit too. I've always been a fan of Peanuts, the comic strip, and so I decided to read this book of interviews with Charles Schultz, What Cartooning Really Is. And boy, this was just a tremendous look inside of what Schultz thinks about himself, about his childhood, some of the, I don't really want to say inner demons, but maybe some of the things that he struggled with as a child and even as an adult, and things that we struggle with, which I think is why Peanuts is so popular. We can all identify with it. Yeah. So those are two books that I've recently read that really struck me.
Well, it's interesting because I don't think I've mentioned this before, but by marriage, Charles Schultz is my second cousin.
Get out of here. Are you serious?
Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think I've mentioned that before. And that's also, it's not really, like I said, it's not by blood or anything. It's just by marriage. And also it was on my father's side, and he was adopted. So technically it's all a bunch of rules, but for the most part, it's like, yeah, I can say that Charles Schultz is technically a part of my family.
Wow. I'm in awe. I really am. Wow.
And then the funny thing is my mother's maiden name is Brown. So I have, that connection with Charlie Brown and whatnot. And there's Christmas tradition that my father does, because that's on his side of the family, that we wear Peanuts related Christmas things every year. And so that's always fun.
Wow. That is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to read that now. Actually, you're going to have to send me the link. I'm going to have to write down.
Yeah, I will.
once again. And also going back to that, to the transit, that just the way you described it just kind of reminded me of Pan's Labyrinth, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's a great correlation.
Just with like historical fiction, I suppose, in this nightmarish thing that in real life, the historical atrocities that maybe in the Spanish Civil War for Pan's Labyrinth, for instance, or even like The Devil's Backbone. I don't know if you've seen that film.
I have, yeah.
But those types of real life experiences that Del Toro is probably, inherited with his family, and it's just the plight of during that time period, mixed in with that fantastical fictional side, and going through those hardships during a very strifeful time. So that sounds really interesting. I'm excited to read that book and also watch the movie.
Good. Well, Nathan, I also want to put in a quick plug for the publishers of both of these books. This transit is by New York Review Books Classics, and everything they all their covers have this same square in the middle of the book, and they do so many great things, especially books in translation. They do a wonderful job of that. So anything by them is going to be worth picking up. And then the Schultz book is printed by Fantagraphics. And although this is prose mainly, Fantagraphics has tons of great classic. They have classic comic strips and newer things too. It's a really, really wide variety. So that's a great company too, Fantagraphics.
That's the one thing that I don't really have much expertise on, is understanding publishing companies and understanding the people who put all of the hard work into the things that we love. I feel like that is a major blind spot, even for the films that I have, right, and the boutique labels that I enjoy, and the people who kind of craft these things together. So I'm glad that you did that, because this needs to be heard about a little bit more. And I feel like it's always the presentation of the product itself that is the focus, and a lot of the stuff behind the scenes are stuff that I'm slowly myself trying to appreciate, but it's almost like so much work. But I'm glad that we're able to talk about that too.
Yeah, and also I try to buy directly from those publishers instead of buying from Amazon, or
Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, or Barnes and Noble, because they're like you said, those are really the people doing the grunt work and making sure that the books look good, and they really do put together a great product. So I love supporting those publishers.
Yeah. And speaking of support, we talked a little bit earlier that my library here is open. Some of the things that I'm reading right now, this is mainly thanks to Raquel. I'm reading the Robert Mitchum biography from Lee Server right here, Baby, I Don't Care. I've been reading this for a long time, since December. And life has just had some hiccups. And so I've put it down for a little bit, but I plan on finishing this sometime either this week or next. But I've really enjoyed this, and I love Robert Mitchum. So Raquel, if you're watching this, which I know you are, thank you.
I'm a big fan of that one too. I really like that book. Yeah,
it's so insane.
Yeah. Oh, he was just off the rails.
I know. And then the other thing is, actually, I'm pretty sure several of the people on Twitter are friends with her. But I got the Anne Dvorak book right here. I guess because Mobius likes to cover it up, try to read it. But the Hollywood's Forgotten Rebel by Christina Rice, and this is another thing that I think both Vanessa, Raquel, and a few other people on book Twitter have really recommended, and I can't wait to read this one.
Have you read it? I haven't, but it's on my list. I definitely want to pick that up.
Yep. So those are two of the, I guess, fictional, nonfiction biographies that I'm looking forward to. But I like dipping my toes in some other different genres too. So it's nice to see that diversity, I guess, from what you're reading right now and what you're currently, going through. Is there anything that you're currently wanting to read, I guess?
Boy, the stack is just always growing and growing. One thing I am doing, and this is something I would recommend to people maybe that are watching this, that that think, I really do want to read more, but, I don't really have time, or I can't really find something I'm interested in. I've got a friend of mine who kind of grew up through the library. She works at a different library right now. And we decided we wanted to read a book together. And I said, what do you want to read? And she said, I really want to read a classic, like a classic, like a old classic.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what about if we read the Iliad together? So we've been doing that. We've done, the Iliad is divided into 24, I guess, chapters or books, however you want to call it. So the first time we got together, we'd read the first 6 books of the Iliad. We took a little break for the holidays, so we're going to pick it back up. But this is a great way to, especially if it's a book that is challenging in some ways or intimidating in some ways,
Right.
You can read it with somebody, whether they have more or less experience reading literature or classics than you do. It really doesn't matter. But it's just such a rich time for us just to sit down and just talk about the book. And it doesn't have to be like university level type of conversations. It's just a conversation, just talk about what you liked, what you didn't like, talk about the characters you liked, didn't like. So I would encourage anybody that wants to read more and is reluctant to do so, find a reading partner, somebody that'll read with you, a non-judgmental reading partner too.
Well, I definitely tried doing something along those lines. Maybe I think last year when I got back from China, I wanted to start up a book club amongst several of my friends. It obviously didn't pan out because everything kind of went wonky anyway with COVID. But I definitely wanted a mixture of my friends from the university, mixture of my friends who are just outside of that realm and wanted that diversity. But it's nice to see that you say, like, just find one person, like find a partner who can do that, because honestly at this moment a book club could be really daunting and a little bit difficult. It's always difficult because life's just all over the place, but if you find one person who's non-judgmental, then you can I think do that. I think that's a good advice. I'm gonna try to do that myself.
Good.
So one thing that I like to ask every single time too is I like to kind of rearrange it a little bit, but what currently is your favorite book? Because I know it can change.
Boy, and actually I brought a few up here. I think my favorite book right now that I've read the most recent was In a Lonely Place by Dorothy Hughes. And I read it because I love the movie so much. This was my mom. My mom passed away several years ago, but this was her favorite movie.
Yeah.
And I had not seen it before she passed away. And so we didn't really get to talk about it until we didn't get to talk about it, period. But then I picked up the book because so many people had said it was so good. And I don't know if you've seen the movie.
Yeah, I have it over
okay, great.
somewhere.
And it's such a tremendous movie. And one thing that I love is how when somebody adapts a book into a film and it works, even though it's different. And there are a lot of interesting differences between the book and the movie, but this is such a powerful book. And it's just stayed with me. And the movie has just reinforced my feelings about the book and the movie. It's just a powerful, powerful book. And of course, I was thinking the Humphrey Bogart character of Dixon Steele.
Yeah, as you're reading it.
As I'm reading the book, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all. But I think that's the work of fiction that's really stayed with me the most since I read it. And that's been maybe about a year ago.
So this actually leads me to a question that got me thinking about the order of watching an adaptation versus maybe reading the book first, because I know a lot of people who are really into books obviously are definitely more on the let's read the book, and then if the movie, we'll watch the movie and then we'll see how that pans out. And usually, for the most part, it doesn't really fit what you want. And a lot of people usually most adaptations are not the best. So I guess where do you come across with this? Because I've always been a person who generally watches the movie first,
Mhm.
and then I'll read the book, and then I like them both in the separate worlds that they live in, because for the most part, obviously the movie is an adaptation, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be bread and butter what this is. So like something like Lord of the Rings, for instance, I watched those movies first before I read the books, and I love them both, so much. And so that's like just an example of something that maybe I would watch something first and then read. What about you? What are your thoughts on that?
I think about this quote, and I can't remember who said it, but there was, and I'm sure this has happened many, many times, but there was an author who had written a pretty well received book, and they made a film of it, and the film was not well received. And someone went to the author and said, "Did you see the movie of your book? They destroyed your book. What did you think about what they did to your book?" And he said, "They didn't do anything to my book. My book still exists. It's still the same book that it was before they made a film of it. So don't try to mix the two." They are two separate things. And I think a lot of people fail to understand that no movie can exactly be the book. It's just not possible, because everybody brings something different to the book. I might read In a Lonely Place and picture Humphrey Bogart. You
Right.
might read the book and picture Richard Widmark in the lead, or somebody else. And it's just impossible to compare the two, and we really shouldn't. And I do it all the time, though, so I'm just as guilty. But
Right.
I think you can enjoy it regardless of the format. And understanding when a film is adapted, or a book is adapted into a film, decisions have to be made.
Right, of course.
Which scenes have to be cut, and
Mhm.
themes developed, all kinds of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we don't even know about because we're not the producers, we're not the directors, and we're not the writers who are making it. I guess in some cases are cutting out things because of budget, or maybe because the studio executive or whoever is in charge of this adaptation is like, no, this is what's going to be in the thing. And yeah, there's no way we can really fully understand that. But yeah, I like the idea of keeping them separate. So this leads me to some creative questions that I always like to ask. So if you could be any character in any book, who would it be, and why?
Man, I've been kind of thinking, because I thought you might ask that question. It's so hard to pin it down to one, but there is a book that I've read several times that I really love, and this is probably the closest I can come to this, and that would be Sam Spade in the Maltese Falcon. And I could never be him, because I'm not that confident. I don't have that swagger. I don't think on my feet as fast as he does, but I wish that I could. I mean, I wish I could just walk into a room and, take total control of the situation and look at everyone and realize, okay, this person's my enemy. This person might be my friend. She's lying. He's lying. Yeah, I just wish I could do that the way that he could do so well in the book and in the movie too. I guess I just wish I had the confidence that he exudes throughout the book and the film. And he's a little bit more sinister, I think, in the book than he is in the film. But I guess I would say Sam Spade.
Another Bogart, right?
Yeah, another Bogart.
Yeah.
Do you see a theme developing here?
I see a theme. Yeah, I like it though. It's been a while since I've seen the Maltese Falcon, and I need to read the book, to be honest. It's over across the bay in the normal Blu-ray section for me. But I love that movie, and that's a great character. And I also would wish that upon myself, if I could go in a room and kind of identify what I want from the situations that I'm in, and see where the people are. And I try my best. I mean, I do a little bit of that with public speaking, but it's generally me trying to say bad dad jokes at my students, and they just like completely go over everyone's head. And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm confident in my jokes, but we'll see if you're confident in your speeches. So
I guess that's interesting, teaching public speaking and having them look at the audience. And I don't know if that's part of it, trying to determine who's paying attention to you or who's not, or who may be sympathetic to what you're saying, or who may be antagonistic. That would be a really challenging I would think that would be a challenging thing to get, because everybody, I guess, that goes into public speaking of any kind is going to look at their audience in different ways, perhaps. I don't know. Is that kind of an accurate assessment?
Yes and no. I think if you're a good student, you would do that. But most of them are just there and like they wanted to get it done. So they're not really even focusing terribly too much on the audience. Maybe in the back of their head. Obviously, everyone's different. You can't read anyone's mind. But for the most part, most people are just so consumed with the idea that they have to go up there and, do this thing. And so either they rehearse it enough. They have a note card. A lot of the times people, unfortunately, the not so good public speakers are just reading to me. And I'm like, that's not what this thing's about. But, for the most part, I always tell people to kind of like look above people. If you're not comfortable looking people in the eyes, like for instance, I'm comfortable looking in people's eyes because I've been doing it for so long. Right. And usually when I want something, I'm looking directly at that person, but it's not easy for everybody. And a lot of the times these students, they're 17, 18 years old. So they're just at the, very beginning of their adulthood. And so they still have a lot of things to learn about themselves and about the world. I don't know anything. I'm just there to facilitate,
Yeah.
But yeah, we all want to be Humphrey Bogart. I need to tell my students that and they can see if they even know who that is.
I was going to say, do they even know who Humphrey Bogart is? Which would be another great teaching moment for you.
Yes, well, and then I go into my Humphrey Bogart section of the course where we just watch Humphrey Bogart films and ixnay on the public speaking. I'm sure I could figure something out like that, but that would be fun.
Yeah,
that's a great character, and it's making me want to read the book because I like the idea that he's more sinister in that. It's almost hard for Humphrey to be sinister, if that makes any sense. I mean, like super sinister. He can be sinister, but just not. I don't know. I just always picture him as a particular type of character, I suppose.
Well, there's the Two Mrs. Carols. If you've seen that, if you haven't seen that one, he's pretty sinister in that. I think there are a few where he approaches some pretty sinister moments.
Well, I mean, that's why he's such a good actor, right? He can be that flexible if he wants to be. But I haven't seen that one. And I need to watch that film too. I guess going past the fictional character that you can be, if you could write a book, what genre would it be in?
I was kind of afraid you were going to ask this one because I have written 3 books. 2 of them are novels. One of them is bad. The other one is excruciatingly bad. So, and no one will ever see the second one for sure. In fact, I don't even think I have it saved on a hard drive or printed out anymore. But the other one was a science fiction fantasy novel for young adults that I think could definitely be better if I worked on it. But I really don't work on fiction anymore. I used to write short stories quite a bit. And then I have written a book I have a book club at the library. In fact, the book club that just discussed transit, we meet virtually, and it's a guys book club. And I don't mean that to be a sexist thing. It's just a bunch of guys that like to talk about books. So I wrote a book about how our guys book club got started and is still going, in the hopes that other people would read it and want to do
their own
start their own book club.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of challenges in getting it started, mainly just getting a group of guys together to say, we're going to sit down and talk about a book. There's not going to be beer. There's not going to be liquor. I'll have popcorn for you. That's about all the library can afford. And we got it done. But and it's a great group of guys. It's been going for about 10 years. And I wrote a book about that, but I'm having some challenges during COVID to find somebody to publish it. And I also need to write another chapter about how we dealt with COVID. So I have written some books. I am interested in doing some studies, some film studies books, nothing academic, but just more of a personal observations about, film noir or classic film or other things. That I've got a lot of ideas that I haven't really done anything with yet.
That's sing to the choir on that, with a bunch of ideas and just not ever have them come to fruition. I think it's interesting that, you know, I didn't know that you had written those books, and I guess that journey to where you're currently at now and that your current interests. I think it's always fascinating to kind of see the blending of the genres mixing together, because I guess did you say the nonfiction book that you're currently trying to publish, right? Does that mix some of your books that you were reading that involve fiction?
It's basically just the books that we have read in the book club, which are a mixture of fiction and nonfiction. Not really about my personal tastes that much, but mainly just about the group and how it got started, and hopefully how other people might want to start their own book club, whether it's a guy's book club or any book club.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I hope that it gets published relatively soon. I know nothing about the publishing game, but I'm sure it's quite a challenge, and it's even more of a challenge now with COVID. But hopefully, we're seeing the end of those days. So
I hope so.
Yeah. And I guess the last question I would, in the fantasy land, if your life had a book title, what would it be?
That's pretty easy. It would be "You Can't Do Everything."
Wow, that would be my title too.
Would it be your title too? And you know, I've struggled a long time with because you see people, and I'm sure you know people too that you were in high school with, or maybe even middle school with, and they said, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a writer. And that's all they ever focused on, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
But with me, I've wanted to be a writer. I've wanted to be a musician. I've wanted to be a teacher. I've wanted to be an artist. There's so many things that I've pursued in my life. I always thought if I could have just picked one thing, I would probably be pretty good at it, instead of like a dozen things that I'm like, half-assed at.
Yeah, that's the word. I guess it's the worst way to put it, because I always considered myself a jack of all trades, but a master of none, like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, I think half-assed is much better, because I think that's definitely it fits that boot fits my foot too. So
Okay.
I'm very similar to that. I mean, obviously, in the world that I'm sure most of us who are watching this right now could probably have some kind of semblance of something that's like, okay, that's a little bit my life too.
Yeah.
I think it's the nature of what we like, right?
Yeah. And I think it's good. I think in a way that, we are probably, fairly well-rounded. I mean, all of our experience isn't in one basket. We obviously, you love movies, you love books, and I'm sure there's a wide variety of other things. You bring all of those experiences together, and you're a very unique person as a result of all of those experiences, and nobody else is quite like you. And so that does have a lot of positives to it. And I think we have to look at that. And one of the things that I like about where I am as a librarian, our library doesn't have children's specialists or reference specialists or anything like. We're all generalists. And I like that, because someone can pick up the phone, or pre-COVID, they could come up to the desk and they can ask you anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we're expected to come up with an answer, a good
Some
answer,
kind of answer, yeah.
a good answer. So, I mean, we can't really say, oh, that's a question for the children's librarian, let me refer you to her.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So it is kind of nice to have all these experiences converge into one person. Even though they're not, I mean, you can't know everything. Like I said, you can't know everything, but you can know a little bit of a lot of things that I think is pretty useful.
It's very useful. And I think, to me, I always saw it as it's an interesting way to look at life, because you always are interested in something. So I can never really be bored, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I can just move on to something else that interests me. And I that trait, it seems to be in both of us. But I hope that other people because I'm thinking about my friends in high school, or the people I don't really even talk to that I went to high school with, and thinking about those people who went those career trajectory and really focused. And more power to them. But at the same time, thinking about if I could talk to them, well, what the heck would I talk to them about? I guess, and depending on what they're interested in, I feel like I have a slight semblance of like I might have a little bit of knowledge on this thing, so I might be able to talk a little bit with them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's a good place to be.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I think we're getting near the end of the book journey, but do you have any finishing thoughts or anything that you would like to say?
Not really, except one of the things that, I'm not trying to get political here, but as we have gone through the past several months in our country, I wish that more people read, and really anything, but I would encourage people to read things that they don't agree with and read outside their comfort zone. But really, I would just be happy if people read, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, you hear about book challenges, like people say, "I'm going to read, 70 books this year," or others like, "Well, I'm going to read 10." But it doesn't really matter. The numbers don't matter. But read things you love, and read things that are going to challenge you, and maybe challenge the way you think. Read something from another person's point of view that, like I said, you disagree with. I guess I just want people to read, period.
That's a good message. And I think it's honestly because of how busy all of our lives are, I feel like it's getting harder and harder, or at least the text that we are reading is shifted to more journal articles, or maybe just streams on Twitter or Facebook, or comment sections or whatnot. And I feel like I that's probably most of the reading that I do. I mean, for the most part, but I feel like if you go out of your way to try to set up some kind of goal, even if it's super small, or like maybe getting a book partner, right?
Yeah.
Or like challenging yourself to read, I feel like is something that is a really good goal to have. And I think that, I would echo that with everyone who's watching this, to read a little bit more. So where can everybody find you, Andy?
You can find me at my website, which is www.andywolverton.com. I post things in the news that are basically related to our library movie discussions, so you can find out what's coming up there and how to register for those programs. I have a blog there as well, and I usually am talking about or writing about film noir, but not always film noir, other genres, other types of movies as well. And you can follow me on Twitter at awolverton77. So those are ways you can get in touch with me.
Well, excellent. I'll put those in the description down below for everyone who's watching this. I want to say thank you once again, Andy, for coming on. I'm really glad that this is the first book journey of the new year. I think this is going to be a great episode too, because just like what we were talking about, maybe we can set this goal to read more this year for everybody, or just be a little bit more aware of the things going on in the world. And I think that's a good thing. And I hope that people learn from this, and I hope you can let us know in the comment section down below anything that sparked your memories of the books that you liked, or anything that you would recommend to each of us. We would also love to read those comments, and also definitely be sure to try to join those, I guess, twice a month journeys that Andy and Good Company always get us to go on. And I hope you can find that information down below. And thank you all for watching this. Thanks once again for just spending time with us. So thank you. And I hope everyone learned something. So we're going to sign off now. To like this video, share it, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next time. I'm Matt Jones.